The political and constitutional developments of Nigeria have been intertwined with the quest for the promotion and protection of human rights in the country. From the pre-independence constitutional conferences through the First and Second Republics and the various military dispensations to the present democratic government, human rights questions have received merited attention in the legal and political discourse. Suffice therefore to say there have been a sustained struggle for the protection of human rights of individuals, groups and communities in Nigeria. The main issues of human rights lie between the question of an independent judicial system and the question of impunity. The importance of access to justice is an essential instrument for the protection of human rights issues in Nigeria and demonstrates that it is only when the judiciary is independent that access to justice and human rights issues can be given the desired attention. This will be the focus on this edition of the program Nigeria Today. I am Dennis Adigunloye. Welcome. And in the studio to discuss the human rights issue is Tony Ojukwu, the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission. Welcome to Nigeria Today, sir.
Thank you.
All right, and also joining us is Dr. Martin Ejidike, Human Rights Advisor to the UN Country Team in Nigeria. Welcome also to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right. All right, so let me come to Mr. Tony first, Executive Secretary of the NHRC. Obviously, today has been observed as International Day of Human Rights. Just summarize for us briefly what exactly are we talking about when we talk about human rights? It's all-encompassing affair, obviously, but just give us your own summarization.
Yeah, of course, human rights are those things that make you a human being. You know, take them away, you are no longer a human being. It's natural, it's given by God, it's given by nature, and nobody can take it away. Like Fela would say, nobody can take away my human rights. Human rights is my property. But of course, the constitutions of various countries, following the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, recognize these rights as common indices of society, that this should be recognized by all nations, and the message should be spread through education and training to all and sundry to appreciate and respect and these indices of humanity, these indices of the dignity of the human person. So they are inalienable, they are interconnected, they are interdependent, and you cannot take them away from anybody. Take them away from anybody, he becomes less than a human being. So that's what human rights are.
And no doubt the right to life is the cardinal right. All right, Dr. Martin, let's just get your initial thoughts on today being Human Rights Day.
Well, today, the 10th of December is actually the commemoration of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it's set aside to remember this significant development in international human rights, because actually the first time the UN adopted a document on international human rights, basically recognizing, of course, calling it the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a declaration of what should constitute the element of human rights that everybody is entitled to, without any form of discrimination. Even though at the time of adoption of the Universal Declaration, it was just a declaration without binding legal force, but over time, it has become part of customary international law, and some aspects of it are also documented in international treaties, so they are binding on states that have ratified them.
All right, Executive Secretary, Nigeria is said to be a signatory to many international and human rights treaties and groups. Do you see Nigeria being a full participant in these groups and these signatories?
Yeah, of course. Nigeria has done well to ratify a lot of treaties and international instruments. The key ones: International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. We'll have the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and a host of others. Yeah, Nigeria is doing well in that. African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the protocols and so on and so forth. But the real challenge is Section 12 of our Constitution says that even when we ratify or sign any international treaty, for them to become applicable in Nigeria, for the Nigerians to take benefit of it, our parliament needs to do what we call domestication. That is applying those international treaties as a local legislation so that they can become enforceable in Nigeria. That is where the challenge is.
So basically, you're saying that in over time, the legislative arm of government has not been able to go through that process.
In fact, this has been a very important issue of discourse. The other day, we went to see the Speaker of the House of Reps. We understand now that the committee has been mandated to look at all the international treaties that Nigeria has signed or ratified so that we can domesticate them, so that Nigerians can take benefit of these international instruments and treaties. It is very, very important because if you look at a treaty like CEDAW, CEDAW is not yet domesticated. We are still grappling with inequalities concerning women. We are still, it's only the VAP Act that was passed into law the other day. You know, other legislations concerning the rights of women, you can see how women are gradually fizzling out in the parliament, you know, because of inequalities, because of lack of empowerment, because of lack of equal opportunities. The affirmative action is not yet here. You know, even the 35% that was of appointive positions, we're not even near it. You know, and it's creating a generational difference in the contributions women can make in national development. So we think that if these international treaties to which Nigeria has signed and ratified are domesticated and we take the full benefit of them, it will help in national development.
All right, Dr. Martin, we've talked about the women. Let's talk a little bit about the child. In terms of the child's rights in Nigeria, would you say we're at par with, let's say, developed nations?
Well, I would say that I've been following the line of what Tony has said. I think I would say, well, progress have been made in terms of having a legal framework. The legal framework exists. The Child Rights Act that domesticates the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but a major challenge still remains. That major challenge is implementation. Implementation is a very weak area. It's not all states that have actually ratified the Child Rights Act. So, which means that for a good number of states in Nigeria do not have laws protecting the rights of the child. So they do not even have the legal framework, not to talk of addressing the issues of implementation. That's very critical. So I think it's important. The direction of movement, and I think I heard that during the Human Rights Summit that the Human Rights Commission organized. There's a trend of thought that is saying, no, focus should be on advocacy to encourage those states that have not ratified the Child Rights Act to ratify them, because it's important. If you don't, if those rights are not, if the Child Rights Act is not ratified, you then do not have the legal framework for child protection. Linked to that, I actually wanted to say something about CEDAW and the rights of women, because it's very important. One dimension of it that we are missing is that when you do not have equality between men and women, boys and girls, what you're doing is that you are excluding from the political and economic process of the country about 51% of the population. So you are not maximizing the benefits of the population of this country. This is really how I want to, look at this issue of non-ratification of CEDAW, and hopefully the Ninth Assembly would give this the priority that it requires.
Yeah, that's certainly an important statistic that you just raised there, and certainly half the population being of the fairer sex certainly have a lot to contribute to national developments. All right, Mr. Ojukwu, let me come back to you. Would you say that Nigerians satisfactorily aware of their fundamental human rights as they go?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. But of course, you know, this is a huge country. We are talking of well over 200 million people, and we've been trying to see how much we can do to create awareness. I will not say that all Nigerians know about their rights. It's tough, you know. We are working on that, and other agencies, civil society, in collaboration with the Commission and other government agencies, are all part of this process. But what I would say is there is increasing awareness about rights. Okay. Looking at where we started from, a period of military regime to democracy since 20 years ago, you can see we have witnessed a constant increase in the number of people who are accessing the Commission to complain about their rights. Now, for me, that does not mean that violations of rights are increasing. But what it does mean is that people are now more aware that once their right is violated, there is a place they can go to make a complaint. Okay. But it's work in progress, you know, and thank God for the media, because I mean, you can imagine how many millions of Nigerians are watching NTA right now, listening to these messages, and we believe that if we constantly do this, we're trying to. The team for International Human Rights Day this year is Youth Stand Up for Rights, and we are looking at mainstreaming human rights education into the curriculum in the primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions. We are establishing human rights clubs in schools so that children, the youth can because the youth bulge is there. The population bulge concerning the youth is hitting us in the face. So, like Martin said, this is a very vital group that if you harness their potentials, if you harness their rights, you are likely to achieve the sustainable development goals, because if you are able to make sure you don't leave them behind in all areas of development, and they are able to participate and contribute to their own quota to national development, it will help in prosperity for Nigeria.
Yep, so catching them young, as they say, is very critical. Would you say, in your experience, what kind of complaints of breaches of human rights have you come across?
Wow, it's a plethora. The highest number you will see are around women and children issues. You know, of course, children have the rights to be protected, to be given basic education, right for necessaries. You need to give children food, they need to go to school, they need to be clothed, you need to provide shelter for them, and so on and so forth. And the economic situation in the country are making the men unable to meet most of their responsibilities. So a huge number of complaints come every day concerning family issues, children's rights, women's rights, and so on and so forth. Of course, you have the normal cases of unlawful arrest and detention, issues of bail, you know, and then you have other issues concerning employment, people unlawfully terminated or people discriminated against while they are trying to seek for employment, and a whole range of others, you know. But the greatest number of complaints we have are from women, children, and vulnerable groups. And there's this emerging trend now, the right of older persons.
Yes.
These are vulnerable groups, the rights of people living with disabilities. You know, these are people you don't need to leave behind if you are going to achieve the sustainable development goals. So we have complaints from all these areas.
Quite a wide plethora, like you said. All right, let's take a quick break to join our correspondent, Ololade Alayaki, who spoke with some Nigerians on the streets on this issue. Let's see how well they know their fundamental human rights.
Yes, I know my rights. Some of my rights is freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of movement, and so on and so forth.
My rights to express myself, my rights to use public property if the property is provided by government, then my rights to associate with people of my choice.
Rights as a human being. First of all, we have the right to life, the right to the basic amenities of life, which is water, shelter, and clothing. The right to education, and so many others. If your rights are violated, you report to the Human Rights Authority so that they can help you pursue or prosecute whoever has violated your rights.
Human rights are basic inherent rights, irrespective of your race, your sex. But once you're a human being, you have the right to live, the right to walk around, and the right to your own opinion. That's what I think is human rights. If my right is violated, I think I will go to court.
All right, welcome back to the studio. We're still with our guests, Tony Ojukwu, the Executive Secretary of the NHRC, and Dr. Martin Ejidike. You heard some of the comments there from members of the public, Dr. Martin. Clearly, they have a pretty good understanding of what basic human rights are. Just give us your take on how you feel they responded.
I think there's a clear understanding. I mean, of what the interviewees that they understand, what their rights are, and they were able to actually express what the rights were and what they would do if their rights were violated. But looking at it generally in the context of which we are, you would say that yes, those rights are there, but the realization of those rights still remains a challenge because of the weak national institutions for protection and promotion. I mean, for instance, someone talked there about the right to access to water. How many people in Abuja, for instance, have access to pipe-borne water? Okay, and what mechanisms exist for them to claim that right? That's what I'm talking about in terms of the realization of those rights, where I think the challenge still is, particularly also in relation to economic, social, and cultural rights.
Yes.
Because even under the Nigerian Constitution, there is a dichotomy between civil and political rights and economic, social, and cultural rights, where you have economic, social, and cultural rights as directive principles and objective principles of state policy. So it's really not actionable in court. But there's been a few cases in the courts where the courts made decisions that, where there is a government policy in relation to the implementation of a particular right, then it should be actionable in court. So, but generally there is, I think, there is need for effort to ensure a kind of parity between civil and political rights and economic, social, and cultural rights, because you cannot have one without the other.
All right, Executive Secretary, in terms of your agency, you talk about the complaints that come in, but what is done with regards to protecting and promoting those rights that have been violated? What recourse do complainants have?
Well, when complainants come to us, first of all, we have a complaints treatment mechanism. The complaint treatment mechanism is the process, we put through complaints. First of all, we look at, is this complaint a human rights complaint? Because a lot of people come, for instance, maybe tenant-landlord relationship, somebody had a contract and somebody's not paying you your money, So at times they don't understand the difference. So what we do is immediately a complaint is lodged, we put it through the admissibility test, which will put it, because our mandate is to deal with human rights violations. So if it's not a human rights violation, that means we don't have the mandate to deal with it. Now, once it passes through the test and it is deemed to be a human rights violation, then the next thing we do is we now must give the other party a fair hearing. At that stage, we now confront the alleged violator. We'll call it alleged violator because it's not yet proven. So we now confront the alleged violator with the details of the violation and request for a response. Now, when the person has responded, we may, if we look at the response, there may be need to bring two of them together to now look at the issues deeper And in that way, we're able to reach a decision as to whether actually a right has been violated, and then what remedy do we prefer in the circumstance. All kinds of remedy can come. For instance, the remedy can be an apology, it can be a restitution, it can be damages, it can be...
That's on the directive of the NHRC?
Yes,
okay.
you know, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dr. Martin, let's talk about cases of, police arrests. When someone's been interrogated, sometimes we hear of suspects being tortured to get a confession or whatever the case may be. I'm sure this is an area that is also being looked at quite seriously.
Yeah, this is a huge problem actually globally. The conduct of law enforcement authorities, particularly the police. I think there's been a lot of allegations in Nigeria in terms of torture in police detention centers, and at some point I think there was actually a report that alleged that in some police centers there were actually commanders responsible for torture. But the unfortunate thing again, and this is where I keep talking about the framework for protection, the mechanisms for protection, national mechanisms for protection. I mean, what you ask yourself, what are the tools that the police have to conduct criminal investigations? I mean, I've organized a lot of workshops, for police, for security agencies, but you repeatedly hear that they're not sufficiently resourced to undertake these investigations, these investigations. So there is immediately a resort to torture, and most of the criminal cases that go to court, are resolved on the basis of witness testimony and witness confession. So when you check the number, the percentage of cases that were resolved on the basis of witness confession in Nigeria, it far would outstrip what you get from any other jurisdiction where the police actually does its work properly. And this is where we keep talking about it's really important for the police and the law enforcement to do their work in accordance with the law. You cannot implement the law outside the law.
Absolutely.
Implementation of the law must be within the law.
All right, Mr. Tony, let me give you the last word very briefly. Just give us your last words on this topic.
Yeah, I think that we need to improve the infrastructure that will help us to protect the human rights of people. A large chunk of complaints in the criminal justice administration, which is heavy on the police and law enforcement agencies, is because the infrastructure is weak. For instance, a simple thing like CCTV camera
would be a big help.
could make a huge difference in police investigations in this country.
Absolutely.
And it's because they don't have that that they are now forced to torture people to confess. Because if you have a CCTV camera and any criminal operates, you'll be able to roll it back and get clear evidence you can use to deal with it. That
would certainly be a big, major benefit to the process. All right, that is it for now on the program Nigeria Today. Thanks to our guests, Mr. Tony Ojukwu, Executive Secretary, National Human Rights Commission. Thanks for your time on Nigeria Today, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yep, and to you, Dr. Martin Ejidike, Human Rights Advisor to the UN country team in Nigeria. Thanks also for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, and to our viewer, thanks for watching. And remember, you can watch this edition and any other on our YouTube channel on your screen, youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. The program returns tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Thanks for watching. I am Dennis Adigunloye.